will be talking about the paper I wrote a year and a half ago about tax competition, but from within domestic policy perspective. While tax competition is an external constraint, I think we cannot deny that, but the way countries proceed to change their taxation policy, it increases the impact of tax competition. So this is what I will be talking about. I wanted to start with two citations. Unfortunately, you don't have them up there, but oh yeah, okay. Okay, just read it. Okay, let's read it. Yes, yeah. I'll start by saying that I have done an analysis of two consultation processes, one in Australia in 2002 and one in Canada in 2008. Basically, both countries were looking at how to improve their international tax policies. So I looked at both consultation processes. I looked at who participated, I did an analysis of the discourse in the consultation paper and in the report and the recommendations that followed that. So this is the paper I'm presenting is about this, the findings of this analysis. And there we have it. Thank you. So these are the citations that I was talking about. The first one is from Paul Krugman, who's an economist, as you probably know. And he wrote that in 1994. He said, so let's start telling the truth, competitiveness is a meaningless word when applied to national economies, and the obsession with competitiveness is both wrong and dangerous. And he said that in 1994. We have not seen competitiveness disappear from public discourses. And in 2012, Jane Gravel, who works for Congressional Research Service, said, it is important that public discourse move away from meaningless concepts such as international competitiveness and instead focus on what tax policies might be optimal and that they fulfill the more appropriate objective of better off. So I started looking at that, and I was wondering, how can we empirically analyze the consequence of competitiveness discourse? And from these writings and others, we can make some assumption. We can make the assumption that it constrains policy options within a specific paradigm, that it reinforces the power of and the influence of the business sector over tax policy, and it precludes from multilateral cooperation. So this is the three assumptions that I looked at while addressing the analysis. So the two consultations, I talked to you a little bit about that. Australia, it followed a general reduction in corporate taxation. And so the corporate tax rates were reduced in Australia prior to this consultation, and then they looked at their international taxation policy. The Treasurer published a consultation paper in August 2002, and the consultation was conducted by the Board of Taxation, which is the permanent consultative body, and a subcommittee was formed to address specifically this consultation. From within the small committee, there were tax professionals and officials, and there was one representative from the broader community, but who resigned a few weeks after because of lack of resources to help in understanding the technical details of this consultation. The board produced the report. He conducted the consultation and he produced the report and recommendation afterward. The consultation paper was giving the mandate specifically to look at options to attract equity capital for investment abroad, so from domestic companies investing abroad, and increase attractiveness of Australia as the location for multinational headquarters, and particularly two specific tax policy that were listed there. In Canada, the same kind of consultation was conducted in 2008. It also followed a general reduction of corporate tax rates, It was within the broader program of Canadian Tax Advantage, talking about fairness and competitiveness in taxation. The consultation paper and the consultation was conducted and the report was prepared by a temporary advisory panel. And this panel was formed by people from the private sector mostly. The study was to recommend measures to improve, and the mandate in Canada was a little bit broader in that it did not only address competitiveness, because finance minister said, well, we look at measures to improve the competitiveness, the efficiency, and the fairness. Fairness was a word in there. We'll see that it was a different way of seeing fairness, but it was there nevertheless. So they have looked at specific tax policy. What comes up from the analysis and the result of the analysis is that throughout the consultation, from the consultation paper, the submissions that were submitted to the consultation process, and the report and the recommendation that followed, it is all within the global liberalization paradigm. So countries' competitiveness is blurred within the competitiveness of its firm, and taxation policy is mainly seen as a tool to support competitiveness of businesses. And competitiveness is, of course, based on the assumption that tax creates economic distortion. So international taxation, the conclusions that it needs to alleviate the distortion. I'm going fast because Shell already said that I have only 5 minutes left. About the other taxation principles, some of the principles were discussed throughout the consultation, but they were all always brought back to competitiveness. So efficiency was basically being efficient and allowing competitiveness. So it's always bringing back to competitiveness. Neutrality is also is discussed, but mostly as a theoretical concept. And because it does not point directly to one solution, sometimes we just disregard neutrality. So, and when we discuss neutrality more fundamentally, we refer to neutrality, and it always comes back to competitiveness. Equity and fairness also is related to competitiveness, because in the discourses that in the paper and the report, we say that to be fair, we need our corporation not to be taxed more than corporations in other countries. So this is the fairness that is within the consultation process. In Canada, a few more words about the protecting the tax base than in the Australian case. And simplicity is a major principle that is brought forward because there's so much connection with competitiveness. So you want simple rules, you want to be to lower compliance costs. These are all really connected to competitiveness, so these principles are in there. Very restricted participation in the process. The conditions that favor the business participation are mostly the complexity of the international tax system. The consultation was based on really technical aspects. As we have seen, they have elaborated measures that they wanted people to talk about. And so mainly we needed expertise to participate in the process. This is reflected in the number of participants and the material that was submitted mostly from professional firms and institutes and business associations. Also, the very tight deadline. In both cases, it was said to be a large consultation process, but in the case of Australia, they gave 3 months to submit, and in Canada 2 months, or is it the reverse, but it's 2 or 3 months. So very, very tight deadline. So only people who already know that. And also corporations who are doing international business, who are affected by international tax policies, had time to make their voice heard. Strictly domestic corporations were not involved in the process. And the competitiveness discourse, it overshadows cooperation. So we see that in the consultation, we are mainly looking at how to be better than the other countries on a unilateral basis. So we are not addressing cooperation to have a better protection of the tax base. We are talking how can we be better, have a more competitive tax system. So it really overshadows cooperation. And when talking about some form of cooperation, maybe bilateral cooperation, well, tax treaties and in Canada, tax information exchange agreement, they are used as instrument for more competition. So how can we compete and be more, oh, it goes up. That went from 2 to 5. Okay, so I went very, very quickly. So I'll probably will not use my 15 minutes. So it's really in the international tax cooperation area, the fact that competitiveness is brought forward, it does hinder possibilities for international cooperation. And either of the consultation process, there was never a question of we should cooperate with other countries to ensure the protection of our tax base, except for the exchange of information. So that is the only way that we see international cooperation in those documents, in the consultation paper and in the report. So my conclusion, very briefly, well, governments, they do construct their own policy straitjacket when they use competitiveness as a policy goal. It biases the recommendations that will come out of the consultation if you only look at competitiveness and not at any other taxation principles. And push to the limit, I mean, competitiveness would mean that we don't tax anything. So it is kind of negating the other policy goal and one of the main principles to raise revenue from taxation. Recommendation by businesses and their representatives are necessarily towards less taxation. We see that the process is favorable to their participation. Well, if we ask them, how can we be more competitive? Of course, they will say, tax less. So it biases the recommendations. And it creates and maintains an individual, on an individual state basis, an uncooperative view of domestic taxation policy. So it's not talking about cooperating when we are strictly within a competitiveness discourse. So that's it. Thank you.